Welcome once again into the Radiopedia Reading Room, a podcast unconcerned with books or poetry, tea leaves or palmistry. This is a radiology podcast. My name is Andrew Dixon, and joining me, it's beginning to look a lot like Gaylord. It's my co-host, Frank Gaylord.
Ho, 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 and a big Mariah Carey Christmas to you, Dixon. Did you have a good break?
Yes, I did have a very, very good break. And in fact, the break continues for me, Gaylord, because I'm having a pool party at my house today.
Fancy.
Guess who organised that? Not me. My wife did. The air temperature, it's quite cold today, mid to low 20s, but blue sky, no wind. So hopefully it should be nice. The jacaranda is putting on a show out in the back garden. So
I'm disappointed you haven't invited me, Dixon.
You're welcome to come. Our kids are the same age, but I'm in the situation where most of our friends who are coming over have far, far younger kids than ours. So it might not be as relaxing as it sounds coming to a pool party today. In fact, my oldest, he's decided instead of mixing with the younger kids, he's gone to the extreme level of taking a summer job down on the coast and staying with my in-laws for the summer.
Oh, that is going to extreme lengths to avoid socialising with friends. I like it and empathise.
Actually, this reminds me, I dropped him off at the bakery. He's working at the local bakery down there for summer for his first official shift the other day. And it's pretty early in the morning for a 15-year-old. It's an 8 a.m. start. Anyway, he's in the car with me. He hasn't brushed his hair. So we're trying to smooth out his hair so it looks reasonable. And then he also mentions that he hasn't put on any deodorant. Anyway, so I look in the glove box or, whatever it's called, the center console, and jackpot, I find this little mini perfume bottle, Gaylord. So I'm like, sweet. It isn't going to stop him sweating, but at least it'll make him smell good. So anyway, I show him how to put it on. So I put some on my wrists and I rub it together. And then I put some on my neck and I'm rubbing it around. And then I give the little bottle to him and he does the same thing. And then the smell hits me. And it's quite the smell, Gaylord. It's like no cologne that I've ever smelled before. It's giving this kind of sweet urinal cake kind of vibe. And it's really strong. Like I'm talking instant headache kind of strength. Anyway, he seems fine, right? He jumps out of the car, goes off to work. Meanwhile, I look down.
Did he say anything about the smell?
No, he didn't say anything. He just put it on, blah, 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 gets out of the car, goes to work. Anyway, I look down at this little perfume bottle and I expected to say some fancy French name, right? Yeah. And it says smelly balls.
What?
And I'm thinking, that's a very strange name for a fragrance, smelly balls, potentially appropriate for the summertime, but strange nonetheless. Anyway, then I remember these little woven material dangly balls that are attached near the ignition of the car and how they're there to slowly, very slowly release this fragrant oil smell into the car. It's certainly not an oil for lathering onto your wrists or neck. I drive down with the windows open down to the beach to walk the dog, and it's a windy day, and even with the wind, I could not get the smell anywhere away from my nostrils. It was unbelievable. Anyway, I picked up the son at the end of his shift, and he said it was fine. No one said anything. They did wonder why no one was coming into the shop, and they were leaving very quickly. But no, he didn't have any issues with it. Anyway, that's just a public service announcement. Read the label.
Always read the label. Did you fess up to your son?
Yeah. I told him as soon as I picked him up, I was like, I'm sorry about the smell and blah, blah, blah. He's like, no, it was fine. No one mentioned anything.
Actually, I quite like it.
How about you, Gaylord? How was your Christmas?
Very quiet, just like I like it. Just the four of us down at the beach house. My younger son and I did our traditional pre-Christmas make a terrible DIY crappy Christmas tree out of branches that we cut down in the yard and ziplock to a stand I made. Put some fairy lights on it, all good. And then I had to work Boxing Day. As you know, I've been doing my best to work as little as possible. And the little that I do work is entirely neuro. I'm still required to do the occasional shift on the weekends or public holidays. And so this was a normal ED shift. And I know this. I've been working in the public system long enough, but I'm still amazed every time I'm in Boxing Day, just how predictable the audience or the customers are, I guess. And during Boxing Day, we had probably half a dozen pan scan traumas in elderly people that had done something dumb on Christmas Day, but didn't want to ruin Christmas Day lunch or dinner. And so they didn't say anything. And these weren't little scrapes. These were, 80-year-olds with multiple rib fractures. There was one with a comminuted humeral fracture. And the best one was a chance fracture of L1 with 2 centimeters of anterior distraction.
Oh, gosh.
Who just, oh, no, I'm okay. I don't want to don't want to create a fuss. And then they come in and they're all, they're a mess by that stage.
Yeah.
It's awful. So anyway, that was my summer job, to avoid people, I guess.
Well, speaking of summer jobs, Gaylard, today's main segment is all about radiologist career journey. So this was recorded way back at Radiopedia 2025. Oh, remember 2025? Feels like it was just yesterday. And this panel discussion was hosted by Sally Ayesa and features Rahil Kassamali and Warren Clements, and both are interventional radiologists. So Warren works at the Alfred Hospital in Melbourne, where I also work, and he is the very embodiment of a clinician scientist. He's a medical doctor who mixes his clinical work with related academic research. So he's got a very high papers published to X-rays reported ratio. Gaylard. It's not really a thing. Maybe it should be a thing, an X index or something.
I know a few people that are gaming that ratio, not so much by increasing how many papers they write, which I'm sure is what Warren's doing, but by minimizing how many scans they report.
Might need to revise how I calculate that formula. And so Rahil is our other panellist, and he trained in the UK before completing an IR fellowship in Melbourne at the Alfred Hospital, which is where Warren and I came to know him. And for the last 5 years or so, he's called Qatar home. So we'll be hearing about his journey and tips for those starting out along the way. Frank, we actually spent a night together in Qatar. Do you remember that?
And what a night it was. I never forget a night with you, Dixon. The old saying goes, what happens in Qatar stays in Qatar.
Common saying. You know why I remember it, though? Because it was the first and only time I've ever been upgraded to first class. So after staying a night in Doha, we got to fly first class all the way back to Melbourne. Our own shower and everything.
Yep, that was my only time too. The memories. First class remains a thing I feel deeply yuck about. The fact that there are people who are so wealthy that spending that much on a first class ticket for really what is marginal gains compared to a business class ticket, rather than doing something else with that cash, feels just icky. I'm actually planning a European trip for later this year with my kids and my mum. So that'll be interesting. And I can't even bring myself to pay for business class. My mum and I are going premium economy, which is Emirates, which is very nice. And my kids, there's no way I'm getting them used to anything but economy class. So they're going to be out the back.
You should have just got my wife to book the tickets for you. And
yes.
You can sit in business class guilt-free, knowing that it wasn't your decision and you were absolutely powerless to defeat it.
She does a great job at organising holidays. It's true.
Now, did you have anything else you wanted to mention up top in this episode before we hear from Sally, Rahil and Warren, Gaylard?
Yeah, one quick thing. Last episode, we were discussing complications, and I told a story of my misadventure placing a halo brace on an elderly patient back in my neurosurgery days. And after we recorded it, you had some trusted folk listen to the episode for feedback. And as a result of that feedback, we added a little disclaimer before the story. And I've been mulling over this for the last month on and off, and I still feel uneasy, I guess, about the humorous telling of complication stories on this podcast. And I've been trying to work out why, Dixon. I think it's because we don't really know who our audience is or who's listening. We chat to each other here as if it was just you and me at the pub. And we know each other's sense of humor and our backgrounds and our worldview. And then we port that same interaction to this podcast with the assumption that our audience shares the same views. And importantly, I guess, has the same context to anchor our comments to. But we really don't know, right? Now, to be clear, we haven't received any negative feedback about that episode, but I've been wondering about it. And I know that many medical people do use humor to ground or cope with what is actually a deeply traumatic event. And I don't mean for the patient, and it is a traumatic event for the patient as well, but I mean for the doctor. Because if you think about it, the act of inflicting physical harm onto another human through your ineptitude or your arrogance or just mistakes is not a normal thing to happen in society. And yet we expose young trainees to these events. And historically, we've done very little to provide supports to deal with that potential emotional fallout. I guess one of the supports that we have generated is gallows humor. I don't know. I don't think I've articulated this very well, but I just wanted to float this just in case you had any thoughts, Dixon.
I mean, I have given the audience thing a bit of a thought because obviously a podcast is public, right? Anyone could be listening. But I would assume the vast majority of our listeners are medical and mostly in the radiology space portion of medical. But the thing with a podcast is that, you know, they are personal and we do want to create that feel like it is just two people chatting naturally like you would in the reporting room or around the water cooler, as they say. And I think this is why you hear celebrities and politicians kind of censor themselves when they're on podcasts or other forums to avoid, you know, certain topics for fear of being quoted out of context. And so if you listen to that, your story in context, I think there's a lot to learn from that story, and also the way you use it to support trainees who've made a mistake. But then when you listen to it out of context, you just clip that section out of the podcast, you know, even my response to it, me laughing in the background, becomes an inappropriate kind of thing in a public kind of way. So it's very difficult, but you do want to create that atmosphere in the podcast where it's like comfortable and we're comfortable talking about the kind of things that we talk about. And, you know, gallows humor is certainly part of coping with the stresses of a medical workplace. And so therefore is appropriate for, I think, a medical podcast. But yes, if anyone has other thoughts on this, then please do write into us. It might be nice to just track this kind of topic and see what people's thoughts are.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, and with that, on that note, let's get into the main segment here. It's not controversial, Gaylard. So this is Sally Ayesa chatting with Rahil Kassamali and Warren Clements about career journeys. Let's listen in, and then Frank and I will be back after we've shared our first-class shower for a chat in the outro.
Welcome, Rahil and Warren. Thank you so much for joining me today.
I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for having me.
And I've loved hearing about your different career journeys through your talks. And I really want to kind of pick up on the time that you were actually kind of both in the same interventional radiology department. And it's interesting, like, you know, how you shaped your careers so differently and across your personal and professional lives and the places that you've ended up. I wanted to ask you and get a bit of a sense of if you are where you thought you would be, you know, all those years ago when you were starting out in radiology. Like, you know, is this part of a 10-year plan or has it happened more organically? So Rahul, I guess, you know, what happened? How did we get here?
So for me, when I completed medical school, I definitely knew that I wanted to do some time abroad. And actually, when I completed my intern year, or what we call in England, the FY2 year, I'd applied for a non-training job in Singapore at that time. So it was clear in my mind that I wanted to go abroad. But at the same time, I got onto my radiology training, and part of me kind of regretted not going to Singapore and having that adventure at that time. So I always knew that I wanted to be abroad. But for me, I thought that I would spend stints abroad and just experience life in a different country. If you asked me in 2009 or told me in 2009 that I'd be living in Qatar and having been here for 5 years with my family, I probably wouldn't have been able to predict that. But what I can say is that when I was thinking about living abroad, there were definitely criteria for what I wanted. One of them being a good climate, living by the beach was something that I always wanted to have. So there was a loose idea, but I always thought it would be stints abroad and coming back to the UK as my main home. But now, after 5 years in Qatar, I would probably say that this is home. And also, like I say, it's so exciting to be back here with Warren, who I learned so much from. He was an amazing mentor and friend to me during my fellowship. And actually, there's a lot of things that Warren taught me that are now impacting care in Qatar. And I'm also teaching to my fellows now. So the learning that the knowledge that he passed on to me is still being passed on.
Well, I'm very happy to facilitate this reunion between the two of you. This is wonderful. What about you, Warren?
Yeah, look, I mean, where I've ended up is couldn't be further from where I anticipated. And I think there's been little pivots along the way. So I initially did a science degree and started down laboratory research, but found that like, as a career, it was just too slow paced. It really wasn't quite what I needed. Went to medical school and then thought perhaps surgery was something that I wanted to do. And then realized as I got through medical school and into my junior years, it kind of also wasn't really for me. I went into radiology because I really wanted something broad and flexible. And I'd be lying if I said I always wanted to be a radiologist, or even if I knew what a radiologist did when I was at university, like on a daily basis, like our day-to-day workflow. And I got onto a great training program and then really loved all aspects of radiology, and then found interventional radiology and realized how amazing it is. And I knew this is what I wanted in the longer term. But when I was starting out as an IR, even if I looked back 5 years before that, I wouldn't have even predicted I would have been on a radiology path, let alone an interventional radiology path. And then to go down a clinician scientist path, which my talk was about, that wasn't also on the plan when I began as a consultant or an attending. So ultimately, I just sort of morphed into where I am through this need. So for this clinician scientist pathway, we needed more advocacy, more data, more research in the IR part of intervention of radiology. And I wouldn't change it at all. I love where I've ended up. Yes, it's a busy role. I think having an academic role that's an adjunct role where I don't have actually any time to do any of my research stuff, it's all done in my spare time, makes it very hard and busy. And we're all very busy. But I've enjoyed all the experiences. And, I really fondly look back on our time, Rahil. It was many years ago that your fellowship, and that was my first year as a consultant. I had a great time and have enjoyed every aspect of where I've ended up in this time, even though there's no way to predict where I would have been now, looking back on where I was as I was going along that path.
Just listening to both of your responses, I just kind of wanted to go, me too, for so many things. I guess I'm actually probably the complete opposite to Rahil. Like you're, living abroad and, traveled. I live in the same suburb as my parents and the same suburb I grew up in. So I feel like it's a bit of a failure to launch. Although I never kind of anticipated I'd do nuclear medicine. That wasn't even a specialty I kind of even heard of in medical school, which speaks to a bigger problem, but we'll leave that for another time. But I kind of do want to pick up on the thread, Warren, especially you kind of were talking about trying to fit it all in and, the spare time to do the academic research. Balancing these commitments that comes with the career pathways that you've chosen, it's a really interesting conversation that I get as a woman in radiology when we're talking about gender diversity within the specialty. And so I get asked about my work-life balance constantly. It just seems to be one of those things that comes up. And I don't really have a good answer to this, except that I'm very busy. I work hard. My emails often don't get as answered as quickly as I would like. We talk about this work-life balance, and I just don't know necessarily if it's achievable. We talk about work-life integration maybe. And I'd love to get your thoughts on this, particularly as it's impacted your career journey and where you are now in your professional lives. Warren, is it okay if we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question. I really think this is an undervalued topic in 2025. We've got to find this balance in our work and our life somehow. And even 15 or 20 years ago, this was a taboo subject, right? Like this was a mindset in medicine that if you weren't devoted to medicine, then you weren't cut out for it. And I think there are some people that still float around with this concept, right? These sort of outdated ideals. And I really think we're at the crux now of a changing mindset in medicine. In my opinion, medicine is not life. It is part of life. Things like burnout, attrition, moral injury, these are real issues. They're ruining the lives of friends and colleagues. And yes, we need to be accessible to our patients, but we have, in IR anyway, we have an on-call service, right? So when you're on call, you're on. And then when you're not on call, you're not on, and you are able to step away. And it's that how and how much you step away, that's that really difficult balance. I don't want to end up in a situation of burnout. I don't want to see anyone in my team end up in that position and think that it could have been preventable. I think we must maintain this across a career, and you've got to think about how long you're going to be working for. Yes, we'd all love to retire in 10 years or less, but the reality is we're going to be working till we're 65 or 70. And I don't think there's any best way to work through this, in my opinion. I think it's tailored to your circumstances, to your work, and to your home life. For me, I think it's really important to prioritize the things that I think are important. So family, health, and my patients. and then put aside some of the other things when I can. So work politics, turf wars, work issues that aren't patient related, and try and put those aside as much as possible. You talked about replying to emails. Like, there's probably not much of a point replying to an email 10 weeks after it was sent to you. But at the same point, there's no point replying to an email 10 minutes after it was sent to you, right? So you got to find out that balance. And for me, I try and find time to non-clinical activities when I'm at work. So if I need to do a guideline, if I need to take a meeting, find the time, make your work fit around that and make that integrate into your work. I think it's really important to speak to your team. Are you okay? How's it going today? How are you feeling today? Celebrating wins in medicine is really, really important. And I talk about that in my talk. What do you think, Sally? What's the biggest, single most important thing that you've done to really help your work-life balance?
You're asking me this at the absolute wrong time. I've been working on this major project for 6 months because we've been working towards launching the National Lung Cancer Screening Program here in Australia. And that's just been, everything's been outside of work, as you say, this spare time, flying around and dedicating late nights to an additional project on top of everything else you're doing. It's a really tough thing. And in terms of thinking about, what I've done to kind of address it, it's hard. People kind of say to me, they say, learn how to say no. And I find that especially in this type in your career where you're so excited about where you got to and you're so proud of the level you're at that you're getting asked to do the projects that you've always dreamed of, trying to say no to those is so tough. The big thing kind of for me is kind of asking for help when you need it, especially, as I can feel myself approaching that burnout. I need to kind of communicate my needs clearly to the people in my family and who care about me. And so even working at an education event yesterday, asking my husband to drive me, he made me toast, he drove me in, I had coffee in the car, I got that downtime. And that was really good for me. So, and we're a partnership, I do that when he needs it. We try and support us and our 2 kids as a family. And then we also live with around where my family is, which is kind of part of the reason why I haven't moved interstate or moved overseas. I've got that support to help with my work-life balance at home. But beyond that, you try and schedule in leave, and I'm going to Fiji in a couple of weeks. I try and put it in when I know that I'm going to need additional days to work on projects, or if I've just wrapped up something and I need a bit of downtime. But that said, I'll take my laptop because I can't help myself. But on that note, I will throw to Rahil and ask what his kind of tips are for work-life balance or work-life integration, and your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think this is a really important topic. And what I would say is when I became a father, my priorities completely changed. So pre having children, I would say I was very busy, and my wife understood that we were both doing lots of things. But when we had children, then we were both one team trying to work for the family and work for our careers as well. And then when I've spoken to senior doctors, they've always said to me that when you stay back late to do that final case, when the on-call person could have done it, and as a result of that, you might miss something that the kids were doing, might miss their sports day, might miss a sports class, you'll regret that you missed the aspect with the children, and maybe not regret doing that extra case at work. So I take that into my life. And when I was in the UK, I clearly didn't have balance in life. I would say quite regularly I was missing bath time and bedtime with the kids. I wasn't really reading books. And that was one of my motivations for moving abroad. So since coming to Qatar, the working day is much better in that we start at 7 a.m. and finish at 3 p.m. I still work 8 hours in the day, but we don't run over that much. So I can come home and then take my son to football or take my daughter swimming and do all of those things. And then one other thing that's helped me quite a lot is I'm quite a routine person. So I do set things on set evenings. So we have a date night with my wife every week. I'll play sports one day of the week, and I have an admin day. My wife knows on a Monday evening I do my admin, and then she might organize to go out with her friends. And that's worked quite a lot as well, just to manage time. And the last thing is I always put value on my time, and that's not a monetary value. It's just how important using that time is. Now I outsource things that I don't enjoy doing, and I don't mind spending money to do that. So that might be admin tasks or tasks at home. But if I feel I can buy back time to then give me time to do either professional work or time with family, I won't think twice about spending money to try and buy back that time, because I feel that I want to focus my time on the things that really matter to me, not necessarily on things that I don't enjoy doing. That'd be my take on it.
I love that too. And date nights and, bedtime, with your kids, balancing those against the professionals can be really, really tough. I'm going to kind of change tack now, because one of the big things in your talk, Rahil, especially, was that international travel and global experience has been a really important part of your journey through radiology. I'm very envious. So what do you think is kind of some of the one or more of the most valuable things about that global experience that you've brought home to your local practice and also brought into your career?
So doing an international fellowship isn't for everyone, and it definitely depends on the timing of when your time to do a fellowship is, and that might be family circumstances or personal circumstances. But if the opportunity is there, for me, both myself and my wife always discuss this, and the year in Melbourne was one of the best years of our life. For me, as a trainee coming to Australia and then going back to the UK, I always felt that the trainees that come out from the hospital where we were clones of the consultants that were already there. So they didn't bring something new when they came back. While for me, where I went to Melbourne, the way that I did procedures and even some of the procedures that I did were very different to the consultants that I worked with when I came back. And an example that I can give is when I came to Melbourne, peritoneal dialysis catheters were done percutaneously by IR, while in Birmingham they were done as a surgical procedure with the anaesthesia team there and requiring theatre space. So when I came back, I was able to start a service for percutaneous peritoneal dialysis catheter insertion, which wasn't there previously, and that then was supported, and I trained the subsequent trainees to do that. And even though I've now left, that service is still done by IR, so I was able to bring something. And the same when I came to Qatar, their venous service was not really set up. There was no pulmonary embolus service, and even the renal access service wasn't that developed. But because I had that experience from the UK and from Australia, I was then able to implement that. Now, times have changed and access to education has definitely changed as well. And one thing actually Warren taught me is he always used to say to me, I don't teach you procedures, I teach you skills that can then be transferred to any procedure. So normally, if you know how to pass a wire and a catheter, you can do that in a bile duct, in a blood vessel, or in the kidney, or anywhere in the body. So I now pass that on to my trainees. So now you can learn a new procedure with the support of others around. But I felt it was more recognized if you'd done it in a clinical setting. So that was my take on doing an international fellowship. But it doesn't mean that it's essential. But for me, it was definitely beneficial and has allowed me to add quite a lot of value to the places where I've worked.
I love that kind of pearl about IR as well. You're not learning a procedure, you're learning a skill, and you can bring that into anything really, can't you? Like, even in nuclear medicine, we're constantly evolving as a specialty with new traces and new approaches. But if you learn and you understand the physics and the physiology, you can start to be really dynamic. And every single one of our tests is a little bit different. It's got some creativity to it. So we're in the habit now of congratulating each other. So congratulations, Warren. That sounds like a wonderful learning experience you provided and some great advice. To bring the counterpoint to that, though, Maureen, you and I both have local fellowships. And so with nuclear medicine, we had to do it across 2 different sites. So I was at the site I work now, but I also went to a second hospital. I did some pediatrics experience, which I could bring back, which was really fantastic. But I wasn't really in a position to travel. It was, my husband and my family were in Sydney. We were kind of mid-pandemic as well by the time I got into my second year. So we had those limitations as well. But I still feel like the local experience and those connections gave me something to give back. And I think, it's fulfilling in a different way. But I'd love to get your thoughts, because I know you had a Melbourne-based fellowship and that's kind of experience has kind of shaped your career. But how did this springboard connections with the radiology community nationally and internationally? And then, personally as an Australian radiologist, Warren's a bit of a superstar being, with our journal and academic communities. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Look, I think in years gone by, I think it was kind of important to go international for a fellowship. We were kind of living in a world that isn't so global like it is currently. These days, we have global access to conferences constantly every second week. We didn't have online publishing then that we have now. We didn't have open access education, webinars, Zoom and Teams, which is available everywhere now, has only really popped up in its current form in the last 5 or 10 years. And I think that as Rahil talked about, that concept of being a clone of your previous teacher, you needed to go potentially international at that point because you needed to get skills that you wouldn't have otherwise seen or heard about. And I think about the difference here of being a need and a want. And Rahil has talked strongly about his desire to always go overseas or go international. And I think that perhaps, Sally, you were alluding to in this question being some people feeling a need that they need to go internationally for a fellowship. And I think this modern world is different. I think that in the current world we live in, we kind of know everything that's happening around the world. We pretty much hear things as soon as they happen. So people go to work and they walk away from work, or they're at work and they put a post on X or on LinkedIn almost instantly. They publish something and perhaps it's published by a UK group, and then I can read it the next morning as I wake up here in Australia. It's open access and it's on my phone. So I think that these skills that previously required an international fellowship are now kind of widely accessible. And we all commit to a career of lifelong learning, and we can kind of go and learn these skills at any time. It doesn't have to be during a fellowship. For me, fellowships are about gaining experience and learning to be a consultant or an attending, and not necessarily about learning specific skills. And I'm glad Rahil remembered that pearl from his fellowship training. And it's about, doing things that are relevant for the rest of your career. And I think it's quite important for IR as well, because, being a procedural specialty, previously people needed to go and learn skills, but we're kind of moving to a different training program in the coming years in the College of Radiologists in Australia. And perhaps some of these international fellowships might be a thing that won't be happening as often as they did in the past, and combine that with this globalized world that we're in. For me personally, and Sally, you talked about personal circumstances. When I did a fellowship, or when I did my training, I was in a position with a young family. So my kids were very young. And I didn't think that asking my whole family to move to another country was in the best interest of the family at the time. I did get an opportunity to move previously in life. So I actually did medical school in a different city in Australia, in Brisbane. And that for me scratched the itch in terms of getting an experience in another city. And my wife and I talk about that time a lot. This is pre-kids, and we wouldn't have changed that at all. And I still keep in touch with friends from medical school in Brisbane, and that was a great experience in life. But I probably feel that that you may want to go and learn a new skill in an international fellowship, and that's great, and really encourage it. And I'm so glad that we got to connect, Rahil, and keep that lifelong connection. But I also would stress to our listeners that it isn't mandatory, because in this current globalized world, you can learn lots of new skills at any particular point and take opportunities to continue development.
I love it that it's more about a want rather than a need, and you can have that more flexibility to still round out that breadth of experience even without traveling too much, if that's not what you are interested or in a position to do at that time in your career. Kind of keeping going even more on those global connections, Warren, you were talking about, when you publish a paper, like it'll pop up on social media really quickly. And so you have that capability of sharing the academic and the medical knowledge with people quite far and wide. So I'd love to get your thoughts on social media and the online radiology world, and how you've used that. And I'd also love to hear ways that it's supported research, collaboration, innovation, education, and how that's integrated with your careers. So Rahul, we might start with you. What are your thoughts about social media and how it's impacted your practice?
So I think social media's had a positive impact on my practice. I'm probably a bit late to using social media, but currently I use LinkedIn and X, and that's on both sides. That's looking at people's content. So on LinkedIn, a lot of people post their interventional radiology cases, and you can see how someone's done something. And then it's quite easy to then send them a message and ask them questions. Which wire did you use? How exactly did you do this? And most people are very open to sharing their techniques and learning through that. And I've used that quite a lot. And then myself, I always post interesting cases, but also if there is something that I'm doing, for example, this conference or any other teaching or conference that I am doing, I'll post that as an achievement. And that has then fostered more connections and more opportunities. So even the limited postings that I do has created opportunities for me. And I think for myself, I definitely would push myself to do more and more of that. The other thing is potential learning online as well, and that's through educational topics on YouTube and even podcasts as well. So I've been involved in speaking on podcasts, and that again has created connections for me. And it might be people asking me for advice, but then again, they become friendships and connections that go quite long into the future. I think one thing us as doctors, we have to be careful about with social media is maybe not mixing the personal side of social media and the professional side of social media. So in the UK, the General Medical Council have specific guidance on social media usage, and some doctors have got into trouble where they're mixing this. So for me personally, my social media usage is very much on the professional side, and I don't really use it that much on the personal side. But I think it's just something to take into account when people are thinking about this. And there's also a book I read recently called Share Your Work. It's a very small book, but a really valuable book, essentially saying that when you're doing something good, there's always someone in the world who can learn from that. And actually, it's a very small proportion of people who will go out and post that information to the wider world. So I definitely think if there's value to be added from anyone, then it's worth doing. And I know Warren regularly posts research topics and other things online, and I would say within the IR community, he's become almost a micro celebrity related to that from his talks, his podcasts, and his research that he posts online. So even in Qatar and in the UK, he's quite well known related to the academic work that he's doing, but also the way that he promotes that and the reach that it then gets.
Warren, what do you think about that? What was it? What was the term? A micro celebrity? I don't know.
Micro or a niche celebrity within IR, I would say.
So Dr. Warren Clements, Professor Warren Clements, the niche celebrity in interventional radiology. What is your thought about this?
I don't know what to say to that, guys. I mean, that's yeah. I've been on to my kids because they'll start teasing me about that. But look, I think it's interesting. You felt you were late to social media, Rahil. I kind of felt the same, and I still don't even have Facebook. Like, I really just have a small niche area. I think my reason for being cautious was probably concerns about like posting patient content without consent, and I worry that a lot of people do that and still do that. And in IR, a lot of people post great cases all the time. And I started using social media when I joined the Jamiro editorial board. So shameless plug, Journal of Medical Imaging Radiation Oncology, which Sally talked about. And so our social media team suggested that all the editors join social media. And I thought, well, okay, I'll do it because I've been asked, but I don't really have a need to. And then I joined Twitter, which is now X, and then LinkedIn. And I almost instantly realized the value in this. Like, you open conversations with people over the world, like, instantly. So as an example, I published a paper only a couple of months ago about pregnancy after fibroid embolization and sent it out on LinkedIn and on X. And the responses, like within 24, 48 hours, there were 100 likes, people were responding, people were discussing the topic. It really brought that content right out, to the front of people's minds. And, as Rahil talked about, I've also felt like I've made multiple international connections with people I would have never otherwise met and still haven't met face to face, purely because of a mutual interest in academia, clinical practice, and publishing. And, it opened up an opportunity on a podcast, for example. So Backtable is one of the biggest IR podcasts worldwide. And I published a paper, and then somebody commented, and then somebody suggested a Backtable podcast. And then a couple of months later, I was recording a podcast and, being asked to present at conferences purely through connections made online. And like Sally is a great example. Like, we haven't met face to face before, but we've met a couple of times online, and I've seen all of what you've put on social media. And it's plainly obvious to see, your academic success just from your online profile and what you're doing online. And we invited you onto our editorial board, and you've been championing that role since joining, and that's without meeting you face to face. And so my personal opinion is that in 2025, if you're not using at least one form of social media, you're now behind the times, and it's going to be a detriment to your longer term professional career. And in my opinion, I still don't go down the path of posting cases, individual patient cases. Everything that I post is either something that's ethics approved or with patient consent. And I use it professionally, as Rahil mentioned, and nothing personal. And I think it's a great academic platform if you use it in that way. And I really encourage any of our listeners out there to jump on board and do the same.
Thank you for being my internet friend too, Warren. Like, it's really nice. Like, even though we live in the same country, we haven't met. So I hope we can change that very, very soon. But you're right. Like, you really have to jump into it. And I actually find LinkedIn a little bit confronting. Like, it's kind of, but I've really tried to kind of get on there. And I don't know if it's necessarily a comfortable thing for me to kind of put myself out there and go, hey, look at this thing I've done. Trying to get past it, because as you say, it's so important for the academic community that we're sharing the great work that we're doing. It kind of jumps into probably my last and final question, or just point of discussion for the two of you. I'd love to know, like, if you've got any advice for, people who kind of may be doubting themselves a little bit or want to take that leap but might just need a little bit of a push or a little bit more confidence to do so. What advice would the two of you kind of offer up to them?
So for me, looking back on my career, there's definitely been lots of stages where there have been challenging times, and maybe I had imposter syndrome or didn't feel that that I was able to do that. But now, on reflection, every time I've reached a fork in life, the times that have been most difficult and have been most stagnant is where I haven't made a decision. So I feel just making a decision is the best thing to do, and if that decision is right, that's good. And if it's wrong, you've made that decision, moved on, realized it's wrong, and then moved on to something different. So the first thing I'd say is, even if you feel fear or feel something is difficult, then just make a decision either way and go with it. And normally, this period of time where you're feeling that pain or worry, that's normally a period of growth or learning. And if you're going through life where you never have that feeling of imposter syndrome or finding something difficult or finding something challenging that you feel you can't do, you're probably not at a point of growth and you're plateauing. So now, for me, I almost look for that feeling of difficulty, and if I'm in my comfort zone for too long, then maybe I need to be doing something to challenge myself. And one of the quotes I put in the talk is that confidence comes from competence, and competence comes from doing things a number of times. And one example that I can give of this is, in Qatar, we set up a PE response team, and that was to deal with acute pulmonary embolus in unstable patients. And as part of this, as an IR team, we offer pulmonary embolus and thrombectomies. So for this, we had a new device that we bought to use, and this none of us had used at the time. So we went through a period of workshops and proctorship to do these cases. When I did the first case, I had that exact feeling of, should I be doing this? This is a challenging case. All of the things that go through your mind when we're doing new cases. But again, going back to what I said about Warren, we learnt skills, not procedures. And this was just a transferable skill that we already had. Doing the first case, I had that feeling. But when it was successful, going on to the second case, I felt a bit better. And by the time I got to doing 10 cases, I felt absolutely comfortable doing that. But there was no way to go through to the point of becoming confident in it without going through the struggle of gaining some competence in it. So again, another quote that I put in the talk was, feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's again from another book. And that would be my advice to anyone. And just that everyone has that feeling. Just some people can cover it up better than others, but everyone should be aware that this is normal for everyone to have that feeling when they're trying something new.
And I think that message is so important to hear from mentors and leaders in your profession. And so thank you so much for sharing that as well. Like, I'll throw in even another quote. I love kind of Adam Grant. He's an organizational psychologist, and he talks in his book, he says, summoning the nerve to face discomfort is a character skill, an especially important form of determination. And, even though you may feel uncomfortable, you may not feel like you have all the answers, sometimes taking that step and knowing that if you have put in the work, you're going to be able to do it is so important in radiology, isn't it? Warren, what do you think?
All I'll do is just maybe add something small to the end and agree with absolutely what you both already said. From a leadership and an advocacy perspective, which I think is kind of an important part of building a career, I think you kind of got to do what you feel is right, or whatever your needs and priorities are for you, right for you, right for your team, right for your healthcare system or for your specialty. Take some self-agency and put yourself out there. And I've personally had many times where I've had a goal, but no easy way to achieve this. So, I mentioned that I never set out to be a clinician scientist or to publish a lot or whatever. Like, I just decided at one point, we need a little bit more research. So I decided to go and do a little bit in a topic that was clinically relevant for me. We needed to write a guideline on fibroid embolization. So decided to write that guideline. We're going through an IR specialty process in Australia and, just jumping in there and getting involved. And I suppose there's not always people that will take you through it. There's not a clear path for you to take. There won't be somebody holding your hand and pulling you through. And so sometimes you just, sometimes you can just go out and just do what you feel is right. You mentioned about presenting at one point or alluded to the fact of the confidence to present. And so I suppose when I thought about, you talk about confidence, I was thinking about how do you get out on a podium and talk in a forum and that requires a bit of confidence and a bit of leadership, and push past that imposter syndrome that is completely normal, right? And I always just think about, I don't take talks that I don't think that I'm an expert in. I just don't agree to it, because why would I just go out there and talk about something that I don't know anything about, right? So I only agree to things I think I know about, but then know the topic. If I'm presenting my own data, know your data. If you're presenting something about something that you do every day, you know what you're doing, so you know what you're talking about, and just know it really well. And therefore, you get up there and talk about it. And if you think about when you're in a crowd, you're not criticizing the person who's presenting. You're not thinking about the things that the presenter might be thinking about if they're not necessarily in the most confident frame that they could be in. So just get up there and speak to the audience and tell them what you have to say. And if you know your data well enough and somebody challenges you, you can answer that question and challenge them back, because you just know your data. And, there's no shame in saying someone asked you a question about something at whatever forum it may be, right? Even if it's just an editorial board meeting or something else, and saying, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'll let you know. I'll look it up and let you know. Like, we're 15, 20 years past that time where doctors had to pretend that they knew everything and weren't human, right? So I think that's just got to throw that in the bin with a whole lot of those other ideals that need to disappear as well. I think people will be surprised at how empowering it can be to just back yourself, take a leap, don't be dissuaded by devil's advocate. Opportunities can come up at any point, and you might think that you're the only person on a journey, and maybe that journey is unknown, and you're there, and people are over there and doing their own journey, but you're doing a journey together, right? If you join a societal committee, if you volunteer for your college, like volunteer for College of Radiologists or whatever is relevant in the region our listeners are in, you might find that this actually starts to give you new skills: collaboration, commitment, leadership, other advocacy skills. And then you actually find that there's all these other people out there that you didn't know were on the same page as you, and they're out there on the same journey. You're doing it together. You just didn't realize, right? So they're your professional colleagues. They're your co-advocates. Like, they're out there with you. And all of these things are independent of sex, gender, skin color, nationality, seniority, age, whatever. Like, to me, if you're out there doing what you think is in the best interest of your patients or your specialty or whatever you're advocating for, it doesn't matter what you look like. Like, we're a team, let's work together. And, it's kind of a bit of a cliche, but Rahil alluded to, a path of least resistance. And, I think life really does happen when you step away from that path of least resistance. And it doesn't feel comfortable, but so much of the world is out there. And I think, people that are looking to take a career path, put yourself out there and see how you go.
And this has been such an inspiring conversation to be in with the two of you. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to, take that advice that has kind of been thrown out there about building community. Start those conversations. Even if you don't feel like you have all of the answers, start a conversation with somebody who you look up to, reach out to them, connect with them. The only reason I'm kind of here hosting a Radiopedia panel on a conference or being on a podcast is that I reached out to a few people I admired back when it was Twitter, like 6 years ago. And then I was asked to do a bone scan talk, and then I learnt more and I connected more, and just that moment has shaped my career in such a meaningful way. And I still do get a little bit nervous every time I speak or record. So that's not something, it's something that's less, but it's certainly something that, we all feel that fragility at times. And it's okay to feel that. But, as you say, face it and do it anyway. I think that's a wonderful message to end on here. To both of you, thank you so much for joining us. I'll certainly go back and listen to this again so I can get more of your pearls of wisdom. And I've been privileged to be asking you the questions today. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Sally and Warren.
Thank you for having me. It's been great to chat with everyone.
Thank you to Sally, Rahil, and Warren for recording that discussion at the conference last year, I can say now. A lot of what was said there, Gaylard, really resonated with me, actually. So, I've written down one thing in particular that I want to chat about. How about you?
I actually wrote down lots and lots, way more than we can possibly fit in today. And probably some of it are things that we've discussed before. So why don't you start, and then I'll pitch in a couple of things later.
Yeah, I think there are things that I thought of that I would also like to come back here to in future episodes. But the one thing that I thought I'd pick out today was celebrating wins.
Mm-hmm.
To me, this goes hand in hand with burnout, which is another thing that they mentioned, and burnout prevention. I've been feeling this for the last few months, to be honest. I had this really intense period of, putting together the 2025 conference, designing and publishing the new case reads feature on the website, which was a huge amount of work, introducing the 2-year option for all access passes, which, is something that we kind of needed to do, but also takes a lot of time to think through the process of how it can be implemented. And, when it's all done, other than a few tiny comments here and there, it's largely crickets. You put so much effort into these things, and then you get very little response, direct response anyway. And it kind of puts you in a bit of a burnout slump. You've done so much work and you've got not a lot in return from it. So I feel like I need to maybe do a little bit more of that, celebrate the wins, look for the wins inside those things I've been working on, maybe promote them a little bit more, because that's what keeps me motivated, everyone else motivated and engaged. So it's not about just promoting my own wins, but it's about finding other people within the Radiopedia team and promoting their wins as well, because it all kind of amplifies each other.
Yeah, there's two things there. I think the first one is that feeling of putting in an enormous amount of work and then putting it out there and getting very little positive feedback. There's a thing here that I think we can do ourselves, because often the feedback that you get is actually negative. People will point out, oh, this thing doesn't work, or it would be better. And I know that I've been guilty of doing that. And I know that you've been guilty of doing that to me, where we assume that the other person knows that we think what they're doing is awesome, that we take it as read and we just skip past that in our own little autistic way straight to but I want to make you make it better. And that's the feeling behind the comment. But actually, when you receive it and the first thing you hear is this little criticism, it really, I found it often, and not just from you, like lots of times, like a bit of a gut punch. And recognizing that that's how you feel yourself when you're about to do the same thing to someone else, I think is really important. And to stop and really acknowledge the thing that you think shouldn't need to be said, but actually is really important to say, which is the thing you have done is great. And we do this with our trainees, with our colleagues, with people that work for us or people that we work for. I think that's a really important thing. But that idea of also the discrepancy between the size of the audience and the amount of feedback you get is amazing, because Radiopedia, we get 4 million, roughly, maybe 6 million unique visitors every month to the website. Our conference had, over 15,000 delegates last year. We have something like 40,000 individuals accessing our course content for free through our free access scheme for low and middle income regions. This podcast gets something like 10,000 listens a month. But other than the occasional nice email, it's like we're shouting into the wind, right? And I guess that also feeds into the discussion we had before about who our audience is. It makes it harder to know who your audience is, because largely you don't find out. And I say this not because I think we should expect to be constantly praised, and I don't think we need to wait for external validation constantly. But I do think you're right that we need to find internal ways of getting excited and motivated rather than looking externally. And the same thing I think is true about our work at the hospital. And I was talking about our Boxing Day shift and how hard work it is, right?
Yeah.
And you think of just your normal daily reporting. You spend all day reporting, and it's pretty easy to go home and feel like you haven't achieved anything. And just before Christmas, one of our contributors, Giorgia Bartarelli, sent me a Christmas wish that I then adapted and put on the homepage. I'm not sure if you saw it, but it's an ultrasound scan of a woman who's had breast surgery for cancer, and the scar looked like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And along with the picture and his wishes, he made, I think, a really important point, which was this patient had her cancer diagnosed, biopsied, resected, irradiated, histologically assessed 25 years ago. And the reason there's this ultrasound picture now is because all of that happened and she was cured of her cancer. And she spent 25 Christmases with her family that she otherwise wouldn't have, thanks to that treatment. But when you think of your daily work, I guess because our work is so fragmented that we only see our tiny little slice of it, it's pretty easy to not recognize that you're having this really profound impact. And it's easy for no one to sort of celebrate it. So I think every diagnosis is, in some ways a win that we should be celebrating, and we shouldn't be so cynical at work or with each other.
And thank you to Giorgio for taking the time to send that in as well.
Yeah.
And I think what Warren and others do is that they celebrate or even the little things, but in a very public way. So posting on LinkedIn anytime they're involved in a poster or a paper or a conference, writing a little piece that goes in the department newsletter. And it might feel like you're kind of patting yourself on your back, and I guess you are in some ways, but you're actually also taking at the same time, you are patting other people in the department on the back who are involved in the research with you.
Yeah.
And the more you do this kind of stuff, the more you bring in other opportunities and moments to collaborate with other people as well. So it's definitely something I need to try and do a bit more of.
I have exactly the same misgivings, though, about that self-promotion, I guess it is. I'm not sure if it is self-promotion, but that's the way it feels. And I think there is a big cultural difference between Australians and North Americans, for example. That was something that was really very obvious in my time in Canada, where the ease with which people promoted themselves to each other, to patients, was something that felt very odd from an Australian point of view. And maybe there is value in not self-promotion, but celebration, I guess, is what you and Warren are getting to.
It's the tall poppy thing that kind of gets in the way a bit from the Australian point of view, isn't it?
Yeah.
And was there anything else that you wanted to bring up, Caleb?
Just two quick things. Firstly, the idea of saying no was brought up. And I think it is an important skill, particularly as you pass from early career, where I actually think you should be saying yes most of the time, because you don't know what opportunities saying yes will open, and you don't really know what you want to say yes. But as you pass into middle career, you need to start saying no more often. And one trick that really helped me to say no was to frame the question not as a yes, I should do this, or no, I shouldn't do it, but rather as an or question. So instead of saying, do you want to give this talk at this conference on this weekend, yes or no, you say, do you want to give this talk on this weekend at a conference, or would you prefer to spend that weekend with your 3-year-old son, remembering that you only have a total of 50 weekends with your son as a 3-year-old, and that most of them are already taken up with other things. And the moment you frame it as a opportunity cost, an or question, I think it makes it a lot easier to say no. But it also means that when you say yes, you've already thought of the things that you might later regret.
I think I might have gone a little too far with my no's in the last few years, though, because I think I've been saying no before I've even been asked.
Yeah, I feel a little bit the same way. I think it's definitely been my default position for a while. I was actually all excited because I was invited to go speak to the Azerbaijani Radiology conference, and I said yes for the first time. I get a number of these invites. It was in Baku, and I thought, I know the city from Formula One, so it'd be fun to go see there. And I was all excited that I'd finally said yes. And then they uninvited me, which was a bit sad.
Was it the Halo Brace story?
No, I think they changed conveners, and the new conveners were like, who's this schmo? We don't want him. So I got unceremoniously uninvited, and I'm a little bit sad about that. So if you come from somewhere unusual and exotic and would like to have me come and speak, I can't promise I'll say yes, because it very much depends on my mood on the day, but let me know.
But in terms of my career journey, if I had to, do a career journey story like Rahil or someone has presented here, my career journey would be filled with having said yes to things, or having said yes to myself to be able to do things in those early years. And that's where I am today, is because of all those things that I did and the skills I learned by doing those.
Yeah, I think that actually ties into the second thing I wanted to bring up, which is people who are in mid or late career giving advice to each other. That advice should be very different to the advice that you give to someone early on in career. So it's all very well and good for me to say to you, you need to learn to say no. And that is possibly the right thing to do at our stage. But I don't think that advice is good for someone who's just become a consultant. And similarly, when Warren and Rahil were talking about being uncomfortable performing new procedures and how you kind of have to lean into that feeling of being uncomfortable, I broadly agree. But importantly, I think it depends where you're at in your career and what skill set you have, because feeling uncomfortable doing a new procedure that is a bit dicey and you're not quite sure how to do it, that's fine if you have the skills to get yourself out of the potential complications.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a big difference between a seasoned and skilled interventionalist doing a new procedure compared to a trainee doing a new procedure without all the background skills. Have you heard of my Your Honor rule?
No, what's that?
So the Your Honor rule is really simple, but I think it helps you understand whether the decision you're about to make is a good one or not. So if you're faced with a decision that might have a potentially bad outcome, explain how you got to make that decision and then put your honor at the end of it, as if you're giving that explanation to a jury or a judge.
Yeah.
So for example, although I'd never put on a halo brace before and the person supervising me was not around to help me if things went badly, I thought I'd have a crack at it anyway in the middle of the night on my own, Your Honor.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't sound great, if you wouldn't feel comfortable giving that explanation, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. Whereas, I have 20 years experience as an interventional radiologist. I've done lots of these other things. I've watched this thing. And yes, I haven't done this, but I felt that I had all the skills required to get me out of whatever potential complications arose, Your Honor. That seems fine, right? So that's my trick, along with the how to say no trick.
It reminds me also of slightly different, but in those reports where someone tries to write a little conclusion where they're seeing themselves in court and going, I said it may be, or this, they've included some kind of word and just saying Your Honor after that. And Your Honor would just be like, mate, it doesn't matter what you've written there.
Yeah, I didn't say there wasn't a tumour. I said that I didn't see a tumour, or no tumour was appreciated.
In your head, you're like, I'm so clever with my English. Look how I've not committed to that. I haven't said it isn't. It's not going to stand up in court. Anyway, I think we might wrap the episode up there. Gaylard, how can people get in contact with us?
You can email us at podcast@radiopedia.org with any ideas and or feedback, and you can join the Radiopedia community chat by visiting radiopedia.org/community.
Yes, and last month I read a lovely email from a listener in the Netherlands who I said was named Olna, but that wasn't even close. The name was Ursula, or Eula for short. So I'm very sorry about that. I blame you, Gaylard, because it was written on the screen. And you should have corrected me. You should have seen that I read it wrong at the time.
That is entirely my fault. I'm sorry. Deeply apologetic.
And inspired by Warren and Rahil today, Gaylard, I logged into my LinkedIn. First time for quite a while. And among many messages telling me about amazing locum opportunities, I too could have been working Boxing Day. I found this lovely message that was kind of motivating, but also a question that might be one that you could quickly answer, Gaylard. So this is from Abdel Karim. I'm sure my pronunciation is perfect there. And he writes, Dear Dr. Dixon, I'm a radiologist at the University Hospital of Beni Moussous, correct pronunciation, in Algeria. I would like to express my sincere appreciation for the educational, high-quality content you share on Radiopedia. Your work is truly invaluable. See, I need to actually go into LinkedIn every now and then, Gaylard, if I need a pat on the back. And then he continues, I would also like to inquire about the process for becoming an editor on Radiopedia. Could you please advise me on the steps or requirements involved?
Well, yes, I can advise you about that. That's very simple. Just get involved by making some edits or uploading some cases, and editors will usually reach out to you and say hi and give you feedback. Or if you just want to put your hand up and say, I would like some direction in what I should do to help, then come to radiopedia.org/chat and log in and say hi, introduce yourself, and ask what you can do to help. There's lots of projects for everyone from subspecialty radiologists to medical students and everyone in between that we always need help with. And that is the best way. All our editors only come from people that are already involved in the site.
Yeah, so you don't need to apply to become an editor. You don't need to apply to start editing the website. You just kind of start editing articles, uploading cases, engaging with the community on the chat forum. And then once your work has been seen and appreciated, you will be then potentially invited to become an editor.
It's a bit like a Nobel Prize, really. You eventually get this phone call,
similar. Yeah.
a phone call in the middle of the night informing you that your achievements have been noted.
Nobel Prize for podcasting coming Frank's way. And if you want to help support Radiopedia, then you can become a paid supporter via the website or purchase an all-access pass to our online courses and conference. In doing so, you'll be helping us to give free course and conference access to people in 125 low and middle income countries. And what else can people do to help us out, Frank?
Well, other than becoming a supporter, you can also help us out by leaving a 5-star review in the podcast app of your choosing. Or, you know what, just write to us and give us a little pat on the back, especially Dixon, because he sounds like he needs it. Give him a little cuddle.
Just come round to the house and have a swim and give me a pat on the back in the pool.
Say, you're doing okay, Dixon. You're doing
all right. Hey, it's going to be okay. Well, 2026 is going to be a great year, Frank.
Well, one can only hope so. Let's say 2025 is not set enormously high bar for it to
I feel
exceed.
like we said this in the first episode of last year, like, 2024 was not a great year, but 2025 is going to be great. And then, anyway, the rock continues. And we'll catch you all again sometime soon in the reading room.
Stay rad, everyone. Just hang in there. Hang in there and stay rad.
All right, see you, Galen. I'm going to go get I'm going to call them togs. I'm going to go get my togs on.
Your budgie smugglers.
Budgie smugglers.
Yeah, we should have Radiopedia budgie smugglers.
Boardies. I'm going to put on my boardies.
That's another merch line. Swimwear.
All right, see you later. Bye.
See ya. Bye-bye.